Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Gino here with, as always, Sam Vukas, aka the Giant.
Hey, everybody.
We're going to get started in just a little bit here, so hang tight, and we're going to get rolling in a little bit. Thank you. All right, everyone, we are going to get started. Thanks again for joining. Got a little bit of a quicker webinar here. Didn't want to take up too much of your time. I know we're close to the end of the month, and you guys got to sell a lot of cars. So we want to go through this. This is an important topic that we do want to cover. We're going to look at a few ways to determine if you're wasting ad dollars. And Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the dealers you work with are all doing paid search, right?
It's pretty much everyone's game at this point. I think a lot of the ad spend is going towards Google Paid,
right,
or Bing or other.
Yeah, I would say at this point now it's at least half of all a dealership's marketing dollars are going to digital in some way, shape, or form. I think we kind of get caught up a lot, though, in digital marketing and just accepting the numbers that were given to us and not really being able to dig in and find out if those dollars are being spent correctly. So
my favorite is impressions.
Impressions, we're going to cover that. It's definitely a little bit of a misleading statistic, but we're going to cover kind of some areas that you can kind of dig into your own data very easily to find out if your accounts are running as efficiently as they can be. So again, my name is Gino with Dealer Process. I'm also with Sam Vukas. This is our regular webinar series called Gino and the Giant. For those of you who don't know, Sam's about, what are you, 7 feet tall?
6'10".
Oh, we'll round up. So that's why we call him the Giant.
I'm leaning on the short leg at 6'9".
Well, you know, you'll get that fixed one day. So I want to dive right into this and identify kind of 3 key areas where you can find out if you're wasting ad spend. The first, and this is what I see most frequently, Sam, I look at a lot of dealerships' advertising accounts. They'll give me access to their analytics or whatever the case may be, and one of the first things I look at is to see how well they're targeting either their PMA or the areas they need to go after.
Well, not only is it just targeting, but also knowing if you're getting the return. I did a call not that long ago where somebody was targeting a town because they said, we know we can get people out of here, and I said, have you sold a car out of this area since you've been running this? And they haven't. So why are they spending money there?
We're going to get to that. What I'm specifically referring to here is just making sure that the account is actually targeting the areas that you need it to. Google kind of takes certain liberties with dealers' dollars that not a lot of people are aware of that actually causes money to get spent in totally irrelevant areas. So we'll cover that. This is a big one. This is coming up more and more in the industry. Bidding on your own name. Should you do it? Should you not? The industry is kind of split right now, but I'm going to show you a very quick and easy way to determine whether or not you should be bidding on your name. More often than not, dealers tend to overbid, or not dealers, but their providers.
Can I ask a dumb question on that one?
You always do.
Well, I don't dig into this as much as you do.
Okay.
So, dealer name.
Yes.
Is it proven that if somebody is bidding on someone else's name, have we matched car sales to like saying, I'm looking for Gino Chevy, but then because Sam Vukas is targeting it, now all of a sudden I go, oh, I know I typed in Gino Chevy, but I'm going to click this Sam Vukas Chevy ad instead. Have we tied sales back to this being an effective marketing strategy?
We have tied sales back to that. That's a little bit different. That's conquesting other dealers' names.
Which you should be bidding on your own name to block others from conquesting against your own name.
Possibly.
Okay.
But that's what we're going to talk about here, is how to know if that's happening and if you need to.
Perfect.
The last piece here is a lot of vendors tend to look at the data wrong which consequently causes dealerships to look at their data wrong just because that's how they've been kind of trained. We want to take it a few steps further than what we typically get sent in our monthly reports or over the phone. When you're talking to a provider, we really want to start to look at how to best analyze if what we're doing is actually making us money. So without further ado, let's talk about the targeting area. So Sam, again, you work with a lot of dealers, same as me and everybody else here. And this is typically the case. When we start a marketing account for a dealership, there's a very clearly defined area where we're trying to market, right? It's either by zip code or a certain radius around the store. This is not uncommon. But what else is also not uncommon, and this doesn't cause a problem what we're looking at here, but what is also not uncommon in a lot of accounts is this setting that gets hidden inside Google AdWords. Sam, have you ever seen this page that we're looking at right here?
No.
Okay.
Considering I don't work inside Google AdWords too often.
Start, you know. That's why we're here. I don't think a lot of dealers are aware of this page. This page is part of the location targeting settings in AdWords. So when you go in and you set up the areas that you want to target, be it a 25-mile radius around the store, whatever the case may be, you go in and do that here. But what you also can do is select your targeting methodology. And what it defaults to in Google is this first option right here, to where Google will show ads to people in or who show interest in your targeted locations. And this, as you see, is Google's recommended setting. But Sam, what does that mean?
People that have searched for things in that location, I'm assuming. I have no idea.
No? Well, we're going to cover it because that's really what causes a lot of problems is that setting. So here's essentially an example of what that means. Let's say,
are you saying the recommended Google setting is not the best choice?
Not for automotive. Google's recommended setting is probably the best choice for anybody who can sell products all over the country or all over the world.
You should write them a strongly worded letter.
I've done it, but they don't listen to me. But anywho, here's what this really means. Let's assume, Sam, that you live in California.
I didn't approve this picture.
That's okay. Let's assume that you're also, in your browsing history, are doing two distinct different things. Number one, let's assume you're shopping for a new Honda.
Yep.
Your car's getting old, you want a new one. So right now, Sam Bucas, who lives in California, is shopping for a Honda. What you're also doing, because we're getting into the summer months, and we know that Chicago is a great place to visit in the summer, is that you're also looking into taking a trip out to Chicago in the coming months.
Mm-hmm.
So in your Google settings,
I see where you're going with this.
You're shopping for a Honda and you're looking to travel to Chicago. In Google's eyes, what that means is that Sam, who is doing both of these things, is a candidate for an ad that looks something like this. So when you go back to your Honda shopping in Google, they're going to say, hey, this guy's looking at Honda products, but is interested in Chicago. So they're going to give you this ad for North City Honda in Chicago, potentially.
That's messed up.
Right? But in Google's eyes, it makes sense to them because as an e-commerce solution, which Google started as, and that's kind of where the roots lie, but as a Google e-commerce solution, if a customer is kind of doing this kind of co-shopping and they're showing interest in a location and you can sell a product to them in that location and they're looking for that product at the same time, they might say, okay, this person could probably see an ad. So it could be worthwhile to them. But for a dealer who maybe in LA is not going to ship a car to Chicago, or you're not going to buy one in Chicago even though you live in LA, there's a disconnect there.
Got it.
What we often see because of this, and because that one setting in Google Ads is set up incorrectly for automotive, is that when I look at dealers' analytics accounts, this is what we're looking at right here, you'll see that Google CPC, which is your Google paid search, is sending traffic all over the world.
Why is this number 2 not set? Why does it give you every other location but the one that says not set?
So the not set, more often than not, is because the traffic coming in that segment is from display. Or it's because the accounts are linked incorrectly.
Got it.
So that's why it comes through as not set. But for the other ones that we can track correctly, you see that this dealer has ads in Poland and South Africa, and this is a dealer in Chicagoland right now. So this is not good. So for everybody on the phone call here who wants to know if this is happening to them, here's how you can go find out. You have to log into Google Analytics. You can find this in Google Ads too, but most dealers don't have access to that for whatever reason. That's another problem too. Side note, if your vendor doesn't give you access to AdWords, there's something fishy going on there.
What is it, Google Ads or AdWords?
It's Google Ads, but now it's Google Ads. It always was Google AdWords. It's old habits die hard, Sam. So in order to find out if your ads are going all over the world, or at least all over the country, you're going to come into Analytics here. You're going to click the Audience tab. That's going to open up, and you're going to click Geo and then Location. You with me so far, Sam?
Yep.
Okay.
You should have named this webinar Teaching Sam Google Ads.
Well, I didn't want to make you sound dumb. After this, the next thing you have to do is segment your traffic. So you're going to go click this portion here that says all users, and it's going to open up this selector box right here. We're going to actually deselect all users, so that gets highlighted, and then you scroll down to where it says paid traffic and select that. So now this geolocation segment of Google Analytics will then show, once you hit apply, all of your paid search traffic and where it's coming from. So this dealer didn't have, they had their ads all over the world. It wasn't at a very high frequency, but I have seen accounts that have spent in a month thousands of dollars out of the country just because the AdWords account was not set up correctly.
I was going to say, there's just a couple ones and twos here. There's nothing too crazy.
Well, what is even worse, though, is when you click into the United States, which I don't have on the screen, but when you click in the United States, more often than not, you'll see every state get a very large amount of clicks.
Makes sense.
So this dealer in particular here, their total out-of-network spend in a month was about $3,000 on a $10,000 spend. So 30% of their clicks were basically thrown in the garbage.
And you're saying just in the U.S., right?
Throughout the U.S. and the world.
Okay.
So this is a dealer in Chicagoland.
Oh, I mean, I guess that makes sense. I mean, you got 3 from United Kingdom, 2 from Canada,
Yeah.
so those right there cost money.
Yeah, those all add up.
So between being in different states and different countries,
Right.
they just threw away 3 Gs.
Right. When really all they were trying to do was target an area 20 miles around their store. So this is it's a rampant problem. It has been for a while, but until dealers really know how to look for it, this is exactly how you do it, your vendor's not going to tell you about it, right? Because it's a mistake.
So do you tell people about it?
We do, and this is often the reaction that we get. So I tell my dealers I consult with a lot that this is happening, and they tend to get a little crazy, and so we'll calm them down and we just say it's an easy fix. Sam, all you have to do is a couple of things. Number one, change that setting to just only people in your targeted location. That should block out anybody else who's outside of where we're targeting. But as a fail-safe, because again, Google tends to take certain liberties, as a fail-safe, you're also going to want to block out in your exclusions or your excluded location.
So almost like negative keywords.
Pretty much all over the world. Yeah, it's a geographic negative keyword if you want to think of it that way. So we're telling Google now twice, don't show ads to anybody outside of my targeted area. And then we're also telling them even more specifically, don't send any ads to any of these people in any of these states or countries that I've excluded.
Is this an actual screenshot from an account?
You're seeing these gaps. Is that what you're wondering about?
No, I'm wondering why they're advertising in Vermont.
So that's what I'm talking about, the gaps. So Google's interface is a little bit clunky inside there. You see this red pin?
Yeah.
If I zoom in, it'll highlight Vermont with red. It's just we're too far zoomed out for their interface to pick up on. I don't know why.
I thought maybe the dealer was originally from Vermont.
No. We talked to Google about this. We're trying to make that fix, but it's just a little glitch in there.
Got it.
You don't want to do that? So that's basically it, Sam. Dial in the targeting. Don't let your ads go out of your network. Dealers will save themselves on average a good chunk of change that's getting absolutely thrown away by not having this set up correctly. So that takes care of the first part, the geographic bidding. Now, bidding on the dealer's name. Sam,
this is what I'm interested in.
Yeah. So conceptually,
before you go, because
go ahead.
My whole thing is, and I've been on the receiving end of these phone calls a couple times, in the conversation of watching organic traffic go backward.
Mm-hmm.
And my point has always been, my first question is, okay, well, A, are you doing any type of custom content or anything to boost organic awareness? 2, you like what I did there, A2, people bidding on their own name, when you're on a phone, that's the first thing you see. So you're going to instinctively click that. So if I'm searching for dealer ABC and an ad comes up, most consumers will click that dealer ABC.
Right.
So are you technically cannibalizing your organic search results by bidding on your own name? If you could address
that. In that instance, yes. If you do type in a dealer's name and you do it on a mobile device, like you just said, which a lot of people do, probably more so than not.
So you're sliding an ad in that's going to cost you money. Mm-hmm. That could have actually, if you did organic things correctly, you could have been in position 1. And you click from a user.
No, careful with that, because you are going to be organically in position 1 because it's your name. But what Google will do is force ads above position 1. So even though you might be organically in position 1, the ad space above that could be somebody else.
And this would be where
Which
somebody
is
would be
why-
conquesting the name.
Right, which we have said does sell cars.
It's fair practice.
It's not unfair. There's no regulation on the keywords that you can bid on. What gets regulated is what you see in the ads, basically. So I can't, as ABC Toyota, write in my ads, don't buy from XYZ Toyota, but I can bid on the term XYZ Toyota. That's fair game. So
I disagree, but go on.
well, that's the Google's
No,
interpretation.
yeah.
You might think it's shady practice, which it kind of is, but I mean, we all want to be aggressive. We all want to try to get that edge. This is theoretically one way to do it. But what ends up happening is that a lot of accounts are so mismanaged that it goes off the rails. So here's another dealership.
They spent $5,000 on their name.
Yes, this is in a 30-day time period. So for their own, peace of mind, I blocked them out and I blocked out their names.
Ron, you on the call?
I don't know if Ron is on the call. Hey, Ron is on the call.
Ron is probably screaming at the screen right now.
Ron's not going to agree with most of the things we say here, but that's okay. That's part of the conversation, right? In making us all better. But anywho, this dealership does have a problem. There's no way it ever makes sense to spend this much on your name, but so often this is what happens when you are bidding on your name. And there's really only one thing you have to do to look and see if you should actually be bidding on your name. The only reason you should be bidding on your name is if other dealers are bidding on your name, which then puts you in a situation like you mentioned, to where even if I type in XYZ dealership and that's your dealership, other competitors will show on that screen before your organic listings.
Another dumb question. I've got a few of them on this topic.
Okay.
If I am not bidding on my own name and you are bidding on my name, and then now I go, oh no, Gino's bidding on me, I better go bid on my name. Is there a preferential treatment because it's my name
Yeah.
through Google? So
Yeah.
it's not like a first there, first to own it kind of deal? Okay.
No. In fact, it would cost me as the dealership doing the conquesting a heck of a lot more money for the click than it costs you, because Google has something that they call quality score. Quality score is really just a measure of how relevant your ad and your site is to what somebody's typing in. No one's ever going to be more relevant to the keyword Sam's Toyota than Sam's Toyota.
So is it fair to assume the person that spent $5,000 on their own name was kind of blocking and tackling from other people bidding on their name, so therefore it drove up the cost, and so because they were putting their own ad in position one?
It could be one of two things. It could be that a lot of people were bidding on their name, which would bring up the cost, but honestly, bidding on a dealer's name is never a super expensive cost per click. This instance we just saw was just a mismanaged account where the vendor was telling the dealer, you're getting a ton of traffic from this, so we need to keep bidding on it. No, we were not, thank God.
I just had to check.
I know, we were not the vendor, thank God. But that's what happened here. Now, to your point though, you might want to consider bidding on your own name if this is going on in your account. So what you do to determine if you should be bidding on your own name is you go to your keywords that have your name and you click this tab here, Auction Insights.
Is this in analytics or ads?
In Google Ads.
Okay. Another reason why you need to make sure you have access to your Google Ads account. Don't let your vendor just say, nope, we've got it.
Yeah.
You need to make sure you.
Because this data does not appear in analytics. It is not available. But this is very important data to have a look at, because it not only talks about your name as a keyword, but you can do this type of analysis for any keyword in your account. But what we're looking at right here is a Honda dealer that this is them right here. And this is Google saying you. So they're just saying, hey, this is your site. But you also have this Honda dealer bidding on their name, this Honda dealer bidding on their name, this Honda dealer bidding on their name. These are all dealerships bidding on this dealer's name. Now, to what you were saying before, the dealer is still going to have the higher impression share on their name. They're still going to have the higher position because they're of the highest quality score.
Because it's their name.
But we see that Gaudi Honda is almost there 40% of the time. And if you talk about that phone screen being so small, there is technically the opportunity for them to show above all your organic listings to be the first thing the customer sees. And customers are fickle, and they might, do business with someone they weren't initially looking for.
Fickle, huh?
Fickle, yeah.
Word of the day, toilet paper.
For sure. If Gaudi Honda puts like a really incredible offer in front of me in their ad text, I mean, people are going to shop for that, despite the fact that they might be looking for your store in the first place. So you run that risk in this case by not bidding on your name. But you absolutely know if you shouldn't be bidding on your name if your Auction Insights shows this. This is a clear-cut sign that you and only you are the only person bidding on your name.
Are there things that can be set up so that you can be alerted or know, as opposed to having to go in and manually check or relying on your vendor to know if people are bidding on your name? So if I went in and I logged and I saw this, it'd say, hold the budget, I don't need to spend money on my name.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to go back in every 3 days to check to see if someone's bidding.
At this point, no, you would have to rely on your vendor to get you updated reports. But if they're a partner and not just a vendor, they would do that for you.
Big difference.
Big difference. But that's it. That's all you need to know. If you go to Auction Insights on your keyword, if you see other people on there, maybe consider spending some money. Now, I wouldn't suggest spending $5,600 like we saw in that other dealer. Maybe 100 or 2. We should get it done.
How much percentage was that out of their whole budget?
That was 20%.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's absurd. But that's the dealer name piece. So just be careful with that. Get your vendor to ask you about or to show you the Auction Insights. And really just make sure that you're keeping an eye on things. So keeping an eye on things kind of brings us to the next point, is that we have to just look at the data correctly, because too often we're focusing on, and when I say we, I mean the industry, we're focusing on the wrong data and kind of looking at it wrong. Number one, Sam, I think we have a terrible tendency to look at data in a vacuum. And what I mean by that is I mean looking at one metric and one metric alone, like impression share, and saying, if this is good, the account is good. If you look at data in a vacuum like that, without relating it to any other performance metrics, you run the risk of hanging your hat on that one good metric. Because, for example, if we look at a campaign that has a 90% impression share, meaning it shows up 90% of the time people are doing a search that you're targeting, and you say, okay, that's great, we're good, but you don't look at the fact that it has a 90% bounce rate and 0 conversions and a $12 cost per click, if you only look at the impression share, then you don't know really how bad that traffic is. So you can't look at data in a vacuum. So we have to get away from just identifying one metric to look at, which happens more often than you think.
I've seen the competitor analysis reports that talk about, oh, your impression share is this and your visibility was this.
And that's it. It doesn't mean anything without context. No. Which kind of brings us to, we're looking at the wrong metrics, because information that relies solely on site activity, like bounce rates or clicks or impressions or photo engagement and things like that, those things are important, but those should really be secondary to the main type of data we want to look at, which we're going to get to, being not looking at sales and profit. We need to kind of make that the first thing that we look at if we're going to determine if any of this is actually working for us. So what I mean by that is, well, let's look at the conversation first, the way it's been going. And Sam, let me tell you if you've ever been involved with these, because I know your dealers bring you in on a lot of calls with their vendors. So a lot of times those calls go something like this, where your rep or your marketing strategist will say, your account's looking great, you got 1,000 clicks, your click-through rate was through the roof, your impression share was excellent, people saw you all over the place, you got 50 lead forms on 100 phone calls.
Pretty typical.
Typical conversation, right? Now, a dealer or you or me or anybody who could think would ask, is that good? Because if we look at this data here, we don't know, we have no way of telling if that's good or not. What if good for this dealer was 5,000 clicks and 1,500 phone calls? If that's what's really good for them, then this data sucks. So, but when you ask your rep that question, is that good? Really, all they tend to come back with is, yeah, sure, it's better than our typical benchmarks.
Yeah. Or we looked at some other stores your size and it's the same numbers, you're actually in the lead.
Yeah. But you still ask, at the end of the day, did it sell us any more cars? Which is the right question to ask.
It's always the question.
It's always the question, and more often than not, rep says, yeah, more or less just says, I don't know. But
my favorite is this: can you get me an export of the cars that you sold from your CRM so I can match it back to lead data? Which then takes 2 to 3 weeks by going through somebody, and then by the time that they get it done and turn it back to you, the next month's about to turn, and you're playing catch up.
Well, we do know how accurate CRM data is, right? So that's
the most accurate.
Yeah,
it's pristine. It's perfect.
Yeah. But the rep kind of brushes it off and says, I don't really know that, but based on all that data I just told you, beating our benchmarks, you should keep doing it. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to do it that way, Sam. What we want to do is start the conversation from the actual dollars and cents standpoint. Now, the way we operate, just so everyone on the phone call knows, kind of try to practice what we preach, we operate from a dollars and cents standpoint first. So when you look at your marketing account with your rep here, it doesn't start with the whole, your clicks were great, your click-through rate was excellent, blah, blah, blah. It really starts with, okay, we know how much we're spending. We sync with the DMS, so we know how much that spend actually earned you in sales. Now let's dig in and find out, are we trending up in sales? Is our Google spend actually trending up or down in profitability? If not, let's find the campaigns that are underperforming, and then at that point, look at data like cost per click or click-through rate or bounce rate, whatever the case may be. But you have to start it from a standpoint of what is and isn't making you money if we're going to actually figure out how to make things better.
And from the times that we've walked through this, I've been on calls with you and some other people, there are a lot of things that go into play here. I mean, we're talking what ads you were driving for inventory that you had on stock on ground at that point in time is always directly correlated to what you're spending versus what you're selling. And everything that I've seen, correct me if I'm wrong, at a certain point, there is the perfect combination that is going to be very good for the dealer, but there is also a tipping point where you're literally throwing money away.
Yeah, there is for sure, but you won't know that tipping point until you can actually get down to the dollars and cents of it.
Because most vendors will just keep taking the money. They'll,
right.
Oh, you want to spend? Oh, you want to be in more position one. You want to be here?
And they'll create a sense of fear with the dealership, saying if you don't keep spending your money, your traffic's going to go down.
Yeah.
But who gives a shit if your traffic goes down if it didn't have you any impact on sales?
Exactly.
You're getting me aggravated.
I'm sorry.
But this is kind of the way we want to approach this, and geographically too. So let's go back to the very beginning. So what? You're targeting a 25-mile radius around your store, and maybe it's all set up correctly so that you don't spend money outside your zone like we saw before.
What's the red dot?
Is the area, I'll talk about that. This is a perfect example. We're going to say, is the area you're targeting with your ads actually selling you cars? And that's what the red dot's showing us. So we took over this account, we layered the data over the map. This data is coming from two sources. One is Google Ads. So that's like the red dot and kind of the heat map area here. The red dot is where this account was spending the most money. The other data source that's on here is the DMS. So these zip code outlines here with the little dots and the L's, these are actual sales and leases as they're coming from the DMS, from the dealer. We're plotting it on the map. So when we took over this account, this kind of goes back to what you said at the beginning. This dealership had an aggressive campaign hitting kind of the Brooklyn area. Mm-hmm. They're out here in Jersey. Yeah. But they said, you know what, it's so populated, there's tons of people, it's not that far of a drive to get to us, let's target Brooklyn. That was the conversation they had with their old company. And their old company said the same old conversation, hey, you guys are getting a ton of clicks from Brooklyn, this must be working. But when we layered over the DMS data, as you see, there's no sales from Brooklyn. We can see exactly the sales and where they're coming from because we have the data. So now we've knocked out Brooklyn completely and are saving that money. You've got to look like you want to say.
I have a dangerous comment here.
Okay.
I feel that sometimes, well, again, being on these calls, looking at these maps, I've talked with Rich multiple times with other accounts, and we've looked at some things. I feel like sometimes there are gut decisions that are made based on where money should be spent, and I feel like it's an ego play sometimes when if you're in a certain PMA and you try to go outside of that just to spend money, just to be in that area to say, oh, I took 5 sales from so-and-so, it's really harming you overall because you're spending so much more money to be so much further out in areas where people are not buying cars from you. And using a map like this can tell you that.
Right.
But we need to make sure that we're looking at the data when making these decisions.
But you're also talking about a problem that's been an industry problem for 50 years. Mm-hmm. The ego play. Mm-hmm. Like, why do any of our dealers still show ads during the Bears game? Does it sell them any cars, or do they just want to see their face on the screen before, right before Cody Parkey biffs another field goal?
Well, we have the guy, what's his name now? What's his?
Lewis. Yeah, great name for a kicker.
Yeah, really looking forward to that.
But you're right. I mean, we got to get away from the gut feeling, the ego play.
Helps that.
That's what this is supposed to, this is what we're trying to do here. It's like, hey, I know you want to show up in Brooklyn and you got this guy over here who's got the same brand, but you absolutely hate him, so you want to try to take his customer. You have to determine, is that what you're trying to do? Because if that's what you're trying to do and that's your objective, is just be visible here, then that's fine. But don't expect it to raise your bottom line. If you're going to do that, let's target maybe the area down south here where we haven't spent any money, but we see we're selling cars.
Like I said, dangerous comment. It's
not a dangerous comment. It has to be talked about.
What I've seen.
I know.
Vendors are not doing their customers a service by going, oh yeah, sure, and then not reporting that.
But what did we just talk about at the last event we spoke at?
We spoke at an event?
We spoke at an event. It was in Nashville. At the last event we spoke at, dealers were asking us, why certain websites were designed the other way, and I kind of threw it right back at the crowd, and it's because dealers want certain things and they won't get off that idea. But if you want to let us do our jobs and operate efficiently, we kind of have to have that partnership to do that. But That's another, maybe that's another,
That's a whole other webinar.
Another webinar.
But for now, we're talking about making
Yeah.
decisions based on data.
Based on data. And bottom line is if you can see the money you're spending, how it's selling you cars, where it's selling you cars, you can spend it better. And that just makes sense, Sam.
I like this, talking about the dangerous topics.
Yeah, we're, you know, we're cutting edge.
But it's true. A lot of people, and I don't know how we really do this because we charge a flat fee, don't we?
Yes.
So we charge a flat fee, but a lot of other companies take a percentage off of the budget. So when the dealer goes, Mr. or Mrs. Vendor, I want to go after this guy in New York because I hate him, I want to go spend $6,000 in there, they're hard-pressed not to say no because, great, yeah, you're spending more money for my MCC, and now I can go ahead and we're making X percentage off that top cut, which I think is just a horrible business practice.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's also why we went to a flat rate years ago, is that we didn't even want that to cloud the decision.
Because we're making decisions based on the data that are best for the
Yes. If you spend more with us, it does not make us any more money. That's why we want to try to be the best consultants. And I oftentimes tell dealers when they come on, you're spending way too much than you should be.
Yeah, I've heard those conversations.
So that kind of covers what we want to go over. We have a handful of questions, Sam. Let's see what the crowd has for us today. So we've got, here's the first one. With geographic bidding, is it meant more for new cars? Because we sometimes get people coming from other states interested in a specific used car. So does this also affect those campaigns, or is this campaign selective? That's a very good question.
That is a good question.
It's a very good question. And the answer that I would say is that I would keep it for both new cars and used cars. And here's why. Well, my first question would be, how frequently are people coming from far out of state to buy used cars from you? And how are they finding those cars now? Because what you might find out is that those people coming from 500 miles away maybe just went to Auto Trader and set their radius to 500 miles and found your inventory. It had nothing to do with your paid search, so it still would not make sense to bid that far out.
And it changes too often with your used car market. Like you're not going to always have that Chevy Suburban LTZ in stock, but someone looking for that, like you said, using another website like cars.com or Auto Trader setting that out there. Mm-hmm. So that would be way too hard to consistently practice and knowing where to drop that area to market that car.
Where that really comes into play is really the only time I've ever seen it make sense for us to bid kind of nationwide like that is when we do advertising for very, very high-end stores like McLaren, like Ferrari, who might sell 20 cars a year, but a store in LA might sell 3 in New York because they have clients out there. That's where it might make sense.
Classic cars and like very specific vehicles, yes. That's
but no, I mean, if you're a Honda dealer that has a one-off used Kia that somebody bought from out of state, they were probably going to find that anyways. You don't need to pay extra for that. But very, very good question. Another question here. With Auction Insights, what happens when you find that the OEM is the second one bidding on your name? For example, buy a Toyota car. That is, I mean, we could try to have a conversation with, I think at that point, buyatoyota.com is tier 2.
Yes.
We could try to have a conversation with Toyota at that point, but you'll oftentimes get that to be the case when it's your dealership's name includes the town. So if it's Samville Toyota in Samville, Illinois.
You couldn't go just any town?
No, you were right in front of me. Then it's kind of hard to get away from that. But at the same time too, if you're just Sam's Toyota and Toyota's bidding on that term, that's a conversation that needs to be had with the OEM. We can't really do anything to stop it. But I would also say at that point too, I still wouldn't necessarily bid on your dealer name if that's the only other URL showing up in Auction Insights, because they're not trying to conquest you the same way another dealer would. It's just their blanket strategy in the region.
I think also too, a lot of those times when tier 2 does advertising like that, when you type in any town Toyota and tier 2 comes up first, like buyatoyota.com, and you go there, it passes in the zip code. I know that's a very touchy subject because your zip code is going to include 4 dealers that are near that zip. But I mean, it's really kind of hard to go past the OEM on some things. We have a comment, not a question. Randy Siegel says, Randy's with Legend Auto Group, and she's awesome. And thanks for commenting, Randy. Says, Gino, you're not as small as you are in your cartoon. It's true, but it's just to emphasize how unusually gigantically tall Sam is. But no, Randy, you're right. I'm 6'2", so I'm not that small. You're just a freak. True.
Next question. Can you get ROI without using DEP as the SEM vendor? The answer to that is yes, you can. You can get ROI regardless of who does your paid search. ROI is simply a connection between our website and the DMS. Now, I will say you get more data with ROI if it is our paid search, because we actually will have all of the account data down to the keyword. You could potentially have your vendor link your account to our software. A lot of vendors have a hard time doing that, though, because it means them kind of opening up their account to us, essentially.
Scrutiny.
Which, you know.
But yes, it can be done.
It can be done. So, yeah, you can buy ROI as a separate product. And actually, it's a good thing to have if you have our website, because it powers, say, the Insights dashboard, which if we're looking at all site performance, we want to relate it to car sales. We would need ROI to do that. So, Amy, I would say call out to your rep and talk to them about it. And we can talk about getting you set up. And then we got another question here. I've been reading online that paid search just cannibalized our organic or direct visits. Do you or Google have data for us to measure how much of my PPC is cannibalizing our organic? Ooh, that's another good question. I can tell you right now, I've had this conversation with...
From the comment I made at the beginning, too.
Yeah. I've had this conversation with Google, this exact conversation. They actually don't have data on it. I also don't have data on it.
It's hard to figure out intent.
Well, not only that, here's why. There's so much FOMO out there. In order to actually get that data, you'd have to take a dealer who's been advertising for at least 6 months to have a good sample size, then tell them to shut off their advertising for 6 months to really find out specifically what the drop-off was. That's a scary proposition.
I don't see a lot of hands going in the air to volunteer for that one.
Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, we don't have any of that data. Juanita, if you want to be our test subject, we could talk about doing that.
We can watch it very closely, too, so we make sure no
backslide on it. Yeah. But that would be really the way to figure that out. Other than that, the one thing that I would suggest doing is at least turning off your dealer name campaign if that is happening.
Provided there's nobody in auction insights bidding on it.
Yeah, either nobody or maybe only a couple of people. But if it makes sense to do that, either scale it back completely or almost next to nothing, you can probably see a pretty clear correlation of an up and down between paid and organic on that term. But what we have to consider too is how well these show up for terms that convert for you. So Sam, for example, with Samville Toyota, if you have a bunch of Toyota Corollas in stock and a lot of people in your area are typing in Toyota Corolla offer and your paid search ads are getting you leads on that, odds are you're probably not showing up organically very well for that term, because this is a very tough term to show up organically for. So if you get rid of those ads, you probably run the risk of losing that traffic and those conversions.
If you build a good incentives page, and I have a dealer that's done it, so if anybody on the call wants a tip, there is a way to properly structure the URL and put the right content on a page to actually end up in position 0 for offers, finance, and lease specials in a certain area. So there is a strategy to do it. It exists.
Yeah, there is a strategy that exists.
A lot of maintenance, though. A lot of maintenance.
Very, very close eye on everything, all parties considered. The follow-up question is, what techniques do you do to help us measure cannibalization of organic and direct traffic? As far as overall cannibalization, I mean, it's basically taking that long-term approach and just basically turning something on and off over that length of time to see what the effects are.
Yeah. But again, like you said, it's the fear of missing out. You could turn off paid search and roll only organic. Are you going to lose some visits? Potentially. Are you going to lose those visits to people bidding on your name or advertising in your area that's a different dealer that is still running SEM? Probably. So that's the whole thing where everybody kind of keeps everybody on the same playing field. It's like, if I pull my money out of paid search, but every dealer around me is still paying money, my immediate fear is I'm not up there on the top. They're all going to be ahead of me, which is the problem. And it just keeps feeding the beast. I mean, it's a problem.
Yeah. And then we have another question here that kind of goes along with that. So the question states, with another dealer, to your earlier point, stealing my leads but buying my name, so another dealer conquesting our dealer, does that mean that a visitor who was looking for my dealership to begin with decided now not to visit my site that they were literally looking for? The answer to that is yes. That's what we were talking about. And what's what Sam asked me at the very beginning.
But I'm in the data all the time, and I see in our leads dashboard, because we can match back per lead what the campaign was, and I see all the time.
We can match back per keyword.
Yeah, so I see all the time.
So that's what we were talking about before. So in our conquesting campaign, where we do go after other dealerships' names, when we're allowed to, because certain OEM programs we cannot do that anyways, but when we are allowed to conquest other dealerships' names, we do see their keywords tied to sales, which means a person typed in the competing dealer's name in Google, but saw our ad, liked what it said, clicked on it, went to our dealer site and bought a car from them. So in that instance, it does work, but we have to be careful with that because conquesting can be very costly and get out of hand very quickly. And if it's not performing down to the sale, I'd be cautious doing it. So that's kind of how we would look at it.
That practice still I just don't understand that one, but that's just me.
Oh, you know, that's okay.
Any other questions?
No, I think we're good. I think all the questions have been answered. If anybody has any further questions, reach out to us. We'll be sending follow-up emails to where you can view this webinar again. Reach back out to us with any further questions you might have, and we'll get those answered. So
you can also call Gino. His personal cell phone number is 847.
Keep going. You go. Every dealer I work with has my personal cell phone number. 847-561-6147. That is my cell. I'll answer it. I don't care. Call me up. We can have a chat. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Take care.